Back in the late 60s and 70s, Jamaica's political scene wasn't just about speeches and campaigns, it was about power. And power, that needed muscle. That's where the posses came in. These weren't just random street gangs running the block. They were built, backed, and fed by politicians who needed enforcers. By the late 70s, these posses had Kingston and the surrounding areas on lock. Then came the 80s, and with it, the substance game. Crack and MJ smuggling turned Jamaica into a major drug pipeline to the US. And with all that substance money flowing, the posses didn't need politicians as much anymore. The power balance shifted. No longer just street soldiers for hire, these gangs became their own bosses, running million-dollar operations that stretched beyond Jamaica's borders. Over the last 2 decades, the game has changed again. New leaders have stepped up, gangs have split, and some have even taken their operations overseas. In the US and the UK, they call them yardies, but it all traces back to the same roots. In this video, we're gonna look at 6 of the most notorious Jamaican gang leaders. Christopher Dogpaw Linton. Christopher Dogpaw Linton was one of the most feared gangsters in Jamaica for over a decade. The nickname Dogpaw wasn't something he picked up in the underworld. It stuck with him since 7th grade, but from early on, trouble followed him like a shadow. Linton went to Jamaica College, but his reputation wasn't for academics. He was already running a gang while still in school, and his presence was so disruptive that he got expelled. When he tried to continue at Dunoon, the same story played out. His name carried too much baggage, and he was kicked out again. The streets raised him in violence, and when Joel Andom, one of Jamaica's most feared crime bosses, got locked up for 20 years, Linton stepped into the role and turned up the heat. Areas like Landlease, Mudtown, Kintyre, Paypine, and Augusttown felt his presence. He wasn't just another reckless gunman, he was sharp. Even while causing chaos, he ran an extortion ring so efficiently that his name became a currency in the underworld. His crew idolized him, but the more power he gained, the more the police locked in on him. One of the biggest reasons Dogpaw became public enemy number 1 was an attack in Bedward's Garden, Kingston. Witnesses say he led a mob of 50 men who stormed a house, shot it up, and then set it on fire. Inside were Maris Hilton, her daughter Diana Forbes, and 6-year-old Jahan McKay. None of them made it out. That massacre put a serious target on Dogpaw's back. The police weren't just after him, they were hunting him. They even put up a $250,000 reward for information leading to his capture. During the manhunt in 2011, Dogpaw started reaching out, claiming he was innocent and scared for his life. The police responded, telling him to turn himself in safely. But before he could do that, they found him in a house in Elletson Flats, reportedly with an illegal 9mm pistol. And to make things even wilder, he wasn't alone. He was with a well-known socialite from uptown. That arrest was just the beginning of his journey through the Jamaican justice system. In 2012, he got out on gun charges, but by the following year, he was back in court. This time, he and Micah Allen were convicted for opening fire on 2 police officers in St. Andrew back in 2010. By 2017, Dogpaw was on trial for that brutal triple murder that had put him on the police's radar in the first place. But the case fell apart when witnesses vanished. With no testimony to back up the charges, the judge had no choice but to let him and his co-defendants walk free. He had already spent 7 years locked up when, in April 2021, the higher courts overturned his conviction. After all those years in prison, he was out, but freedom didn't bring peace. The police made it clear that since his release, his name kept coming up in connection to more murders and shootings. His crew was getting hit hard. His closest ally, Romaine Diddy Richards, was gunned down by a rival gang. This wasn't just a random killing. Diddy was like his right hand, and his death signaled that Dogpaw's control was slipping. Then a few months later, unknown gunmen shot him in Bull Bay. It was clear he was a marked man. On October 11, 2021, it all came to a head. Around 2 p.m., the police got a tip about armed men in a vehicle in Elletson Flats. When they tried to stop the car, Dogpaw jumped out and started firing. The police shot back and he was hit. They rushed him to the hospital, but it was over. Natty Morgan. Back in the 90s, the word butcher in Jamaica didn't just mean someone cutting up meat. It meant terror. And that terror had a name, Natty Morgan. When people said the Jamaican butcher, they weren't talking about a shop on the corner. They were talking about a man so feared that even the hardest gangs wanted no parts of him. If Natty was coming, they were leaving. Simple. He didn't need a reason to kill, just a feeling. By the late 80s, the police were already calling him the most feared criminal since Ryjan, the gangster who had the streets on lock in the 50s. But catching Natty, that was a different story. After a massive police operation, they finally got him and his right-hand man, Peter Lawrence, charged with 9 murders. They should have been locked away for good. But on December 19th that same year, during a court hearing, they straight up vanished. One minute they were supposed to be heading back to jail, the next, they were gone. That's when Natty became the police's worst nightmare. Hiding out in the swamps near the dump, only coming out to spread more terror, the cops blamed him for 11 murders while he was on the run. Altogether, they believed he and his gang were responsible for 19 murders, 41 robberies, shootings, arson, attempted robberies, and kidnappings. Nowhere was safe. And it wasn't just enemies who had to watch their backs. Sometimes even his people weren't spared. He extorted businesses, forcing them to pay up or pay the price. When he needed to move in silence, he'd throw on a dress and disguise himself as a woman. Those who met him always said the same thing. He was calm, always smiling, but behind that smile, darkness. A woman who lived through it put it plain and simple. One minute he'd be laughing with you, the next he'd put a bullet in you. Even his own family feared him. His sister Joan once told a newspaper in '91 that Natty threatened to shoot her teeth out just because she questioned him about kicking 3 women out of town for snitching. And yet, for all his ruthlessness, he never let go of his Bible, kept it on him at all times, even while committing crimes. Women in Riverton City practically worshipped him. Teenage girls would risk alligators sneaking through those deadly swamps just to be with him. His love for guns was just as deep. His own sister admitted he had weapons she didn't even recognize. After 8 months on the run, it finally came to an end. The police got word that Natty and his crew were holed up in a van near the lake's pen dump. They moved in, and just like that, a shootout broke out. When the dust settled, Natty Morgan was dead. He was found gripping an M16, but tucked in his back pocket, that same Bible he never let go of. His boy, Bomber Hamilton, lay nearby with a shotgun. Natty's face was so torn up from bullets that the police had to use his fingerprints and a missing finger from an old shootout to confirm it was really him. Navardo Hodges. Navardo Hodges wasn't just another name in Jamaica's long list of criminals. Yeah, he was ruthless, but what set him apart was how he moved. This wasn't some wild gunman spraying bullets just to make noise. Hodges was calculated. He didn't believe in reckless killings that left a mess behind. When someone in his gang crossed him, he didn't always go straight for the kill. He had other ways of making sure they paid for their betrayal. But don't get it twisted, Hodges wasn't going soft. When 3 members of the Klansman gang were killed, the crew wanted revenge, and they weren't holding back. They attacked the police station, but that was just the distraction. The real target was a man named Lando. Word was, Lando had something to do with Hodges' brother's death, which made him a dead man walking. Hodges and his right-hand man, Sci-Fi, didn't just take out Lando, they wiped out his whole family. Detectives pinned him to some of the most brutal killings, including the murder of church minister Charmaine Rattari and her daughter. They were killed with guns and machetes early in the morning in a crime so savage it shook the whole community. Around the same time, another man linked to his gang, Scott Thomas, was beheaded. These weren't just murders, they were statements. But the story that really had people talking was what happened to his girlfriend. She was the mother of his kids, and yet Hodges allegedly killed her. Some said it was because she cheated, but the truth was more complicated. She had warned him that the taxi driver might be plotting against him. Hodges believed her and decided the driver had to go. The plan was simple: kill the driver, then escape with his crew. But things went wrong. Hodges pulled the trigger, shot the driver in the head, but the bullet ricocheted and hit his girlfriend in the neck. She bled out right there. The gang wanted to take her to the hospital, but they were all wanted men. There was nothing they could do. When she died, people were confused. Hodges had been saying he was going to kill her, so why was he heartbroken? That's when it became clear he hadn't meant for it to happen. And that guilt changed him. He got reckless, started talking more about sex, about death. It was like he knew his time was running out. Meanwhile, the police had a $500,000 bounty on his head. They knew he was still moving through Spanish Town, hiding in places like Hopeful Village, Lakes Penn, and March Penn Road. But Hodges was good at disappearing. He knew the hills, the spots where the police wouldn't dare go. Then came the final straw. Tesha Miller, the alleged leader of Klansmen, had a sister. One day she was driving home when some men ambushed her car, killing her. At first, nobody knew who was behind it, but when Tesha found out it was Hodges' people, he was furious. He demanded Hodges hand over the men responsible. But Hodges, he wasn't the type to bow down, and the way he refused was flat out disrespectful. Tesha wasn't about to let that slide. He made a call, put the word out. Hodges had to go. The first guy Tesha reached out to found a way to avoid the hit, then started warning others. He told them to turn off their phones and stay low. Some were scared, but others, they respected Hodges for standing his ground. In the end, it was a soldier who got the job done. The moment he spotted Hodges, he shot him, but that wasn't enough. The Klansman gang wanted to send a message. They shot his body even after he was dead, then cut off his head and put it on display in Spanish Town. After that, they took his body to the Spanish Town bypass. And just like that, Navardo Hodges was no more. Tesha Miller, the so-called welder, was way more than that. His name rang bells in St. Catherine, Jamaica, tied to some of the most ruthless gang activity the island had ever seen. This dude wasn't just some street thug. He ran the Klansman gang, one of the deadliest crews out there. Back in 2005, he beat a case where they accused him of killing 3 people. Then again in 2010, he walked free on another murder charge due to lack of evidence. But that heat never let up. He ended up catching a 7-year bid for illegal guns and a 15-year sentence for robbery. He tried to appeal, but before all that could play out, something big went down in 2008, something that had Tesha Miller's name written all over it. Douglas Chambers, head of the Jamaica Urban Transport Company, got gunned down execution style right outside his office. The man was just taking a smoke break when the killers ran up on him. No mercy, no warning, just cold-blooded murder. It rocked Jamaica to its core. The government even gave Chambers an official funeral. That's how much people respected him. He wasn't some rich executive. Dude was an honest accountant trying to clean up the JUTC and make it run better. But that kind of change, it rubs certain people the wrong way, especially when money's involved. Word on the streets was that Chambers got clipped because he refused to play along. He wasn't paying for protection. Others whispered that he was firing too many people at the bus company, shaking up the wrong pockets. But at the end of the day, nothing could be proven. And even though everyone suspected who was behind it, there just wasn't enough to pin it directly on Miller. When Miller finally got out of prison in 2013, he dipped straight to the US, but trouble followed him like a shadow. He ended up locked up again over there, and by 2016, the feds shipped him right back to Jamaica. The moment he touched down, the cops were on him. See, while he was away, the murder rate in Spanish Town shot up, and everybody knew the Klansman gang was behind it. By 2017, Miller tried to make another great escape, this time to the Bahamas. But he slipped up. His paperwork wasn't right, and immigration wasn't buying whatever story he was selling. They turned him right back over to Jamaica, and this time the police were waiting. They nabbed him at the airport, charged him for trying to use a fake passport, but he was only charged with a $100 fine, so he paid it and walked out a free man. But freedom didn't last long. By October 2018, the police finally caught up to him while he was trying to leave the country again. This time they weren't playing. His trial for Douglas Chambers' murder kicked off in 2019, and the prosecution had a secret weapon, a former gang member turned witness. This dude had been deep in the Klansman gang since he was 13. He had lived the life, seen it all, done it all. But after losing 13 family members to gang violence, he flipped. He told the court everything, how the gang operated, how Tesha Miller ran things like a CEO. He painted a picture of a well-organized crime machine where young boys were recruited, given guns, paid to be lookouts, and sent on missions. If you were loyal, Miller made sure you had money, lawyers, and a place to stay. But if you crossed him, you disappeared. According to the witness, Miller personally ordered Douglas Chambers' murder. He sent 2 men to do the job, Andre Blackman Bryan and a guy named Brucky, who is now dead. Blackman actually went to trial for it before, but in 2016, he walked free. That didn't stop the law from circling back around, though. By the end of the trial, Miller wasn't so lucky. He was convicted of planning the murder and hit with a sentence of 38 years and 9 months. His lawyers were already gearing up for an appeal, but the director of public prosecutions, Paula Llewellyn, made it clear they were going to fight to keep him locked up. And just when you thought it was over, things got even worse for Miller. While he was trying to get his conviction overturned, the law came for him again. The ODPP hit him and 22 other men with fresh charges under Jamaica's anti-gang law. They were dragged right back into court. Whether or not his appeal would change anything is still up in the air, but one thing was for sure. His name would forever be tied to the violence that haunted Spanish Town. Delano Pre-K boy Wilmot came up in a place called Mother Lane, Cambridge, St. James, a rough area where you had to pick a side to survive. He rolled with the infamous Ratty Gang, one of the deadliest crews in St. James at the time. These weren't just some small-time criminals. They had the streets on lock, running things with fear and firepower. But before the gang's leader, Ryan Ratty Peterkin, went on the run and later got taken out, Wilmot had already made his move. Breaking away from the Ratty Gang, Wilmot started his crew, the Retrieve or Preeka Gang. These weren't the type to lay low. They moved like they were untouchable, walking the streets strapped with high-powered weapons. Meanwhile, Peterkin was knee-deep in the deadly lottery scamming business, and that dirty money kept the gang stocked with more guns and more power. Wilmot and his crew used their firepower to terrorize the area, racking up bodies and spreading fear like wildfire. Long before the police started blasting his name across the country, Wilmot had already built his rep as a feared killer. Authorities had him tied to 9 murders since 2016, and that was just what they could confirm. He was also linked to at least 11 shootings where the victims survived. But some of those bullets weren't just meant for street rivals, some were aimed straight at the police. Wilmot and his gang weren't just reckless, they were bold. They didn't just fire shots at cops, they set up full-blown ambushes, lighting up police vehicles and forcing officers to flee on foot. The streets turned into war zones, and one by one, many of Wilmot's closest allies fell in deadly shootouts. Out of those 9 murders, at least 4 went down in Cambridge, his own stomping grounds. But it wasn't just about the bodies dropping. His gang had the community in a chokehold, extorting, robbing, and making life hell for the people living there. St. James was on edge, and the government wasn't about to let it slide. They declared a state of emergency, sending the security forces on a mission to take him down. But Wilmot wasn't easy to catch. He and his crew used the deep woods as their cover, slipping past the police at every turn. For almost 2 years, he stayed ahead of the law, but his name kept coming up in deadly crimes, including the killing of Alistair Godfrey in July 2020. But every story like this has an ending. Delano Pre-K boy Wilmot, once Jamaica's most wanted man, got taken out by the police in St. James. Early in the morning during a raid, officers finally caught up with him. When the smoke cleared, Wilmot was dead. Bigger crime. Bigger crime ran Tankwell Hill like it was his personal kingdom. His gang had a stranglehold on the border between St. Andrew and St. Thomas, moving through places like Bobo Hill and 7 Miles in Bull Bay as if they owned every street, every corner. And when bodies started turning up, like Dejan Campbell and Kamal Forbes, who were found dumped in a riverbed in January 2022, word on the street was that they had paid the price for stealing from a construction site, Bigger crime, and his crew claimed as theirs. The police had been on his neck for a while. His face was plastered all over the Jamaica Constabulary Force's Wanted Wednesdays campaign. Double murder, shootings, arson. His rap sheet read like a career criminal's resume. He even had the nerve to shoot at the police. But no matter how hard they came for him, he always managed to slip away. For more than 2 years, he stayed ahead, dodging every trap, always just out of reach. They knew exactly who they were dealing with. Armed, dangerous, and refusing to surrender. Every time they thought they had him boxed in, he slipped right through their fingers. On November 24th, 2022, the police made a move in 11 Miles, determined to put an end to his reign. But just like before, Big A Crime and his crew vanished before they could be caught. After that, things changed. His gang wasn't moving the same. They were spotted in a city neighborhood before heading to Clarendon, and the police weren't far behind. The walls were closing in, and it was only a matter of time before the inevitable happened. February 2023, it all came to an end. Deputy Commissioner of Police Fitz Bailey confirmed what many had been waiting to hear. Bigger Crime was dead. The police had tracked him down to Longville Park, Clarendon, and this time there was no escape. Bailey didn't share all the details, but one thing was clear. This was a major victory for law enforcement. Bigger crime had run wild in 11 miles Bull Bay, leaving fear and destruction in his wake. People had lived too long under his shadow, always wondering what he'd do next. Now, they could finally breathe. Appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.